Hey everyone, Gill Gross here, post-match Novak Djokovic versus Jack Draper, Wimbledon 2021 first round. If you're not here for spoilers, click off the video in 3, 2, 1. All right, we kick off our Wimbledon coverage here. Plenty more of these coming throughout the next 2 weeks. It's a good time to share the channel, tell your friends, Facebook group chats, all that stuff is great. So now's a good time to start Wimbledon. All right. Novak comes through in 4 sets after dropping the first 6-4. It was very straightforward for the next 3. So Djokovic on to the second round, beating the 19-year-old lefty Brit Jack Draper, who is a former boys singles Wimbledon finalist. And he made a good showing for himself. So I want to evaluate Jack Draper. I'll let you know what I think about his game. But first, let's start with Novak, the victor today. And actually, let's start with the moment. Let's start with the occasion. This was fantastic. Just to have Wimbledon back in our lives. A huge hole. Very much missed it in 2020. And the match started before the players got out on court with a standing ovation for the vaccine developers who were sitting in the royal box. And then from then on, it just felt like the crowd was very appreciative and very engaged, and a beautiful way to kick off this tournament. Okay, now to Novak Djokovic. In 2020, at the Australian Open, it became very, very clear that Djokovic had raised his service level up another notch, up to a level that we had not seen. And we saw that in 2011, very famously, very well documented. The Djokovic serve went to a massive weakness to something that was a solid part of his game and something that would not hold him back from being a great champion. That happened in 2011. Start of 2020, he stepped it up another notch, and he really began to build the serve as a weapon. And 2 years went by, and we had not seen that weapon on grass. Hadn't seen it until today, when finally we have seen the Novak Djokovic serve. I don't want to call it 2.0. I want to call it 3.0. We had seen that serve in action. And Djokovic hit 25 aces in a pretty short match. His record is 26, and I'm not sure what match it came into, but I know his record is 26. The service games were very quick, a little bit Federer-like in terms of just the swiftness and the number of aces that were coming off the racket of Novak Djokovic, Wimbledon center court. So that was a big factor, a big positive, and something to watch throughout the tournament. Let's see what kind of weapon that can be against the better returners later in the tournament, because I don't really think that, I don't know when the first really high-level returner Djokovic is going to face. I don't know when that's going to be, but let's see how effective it is. I imagine Novak is going to be coming up with clutch serves in big moments throughout the fortnight. But this is a really intriguing start. Again, the first time we've seen the Djokovic 3.0 serve on the grass court, which should really reward it. 25 aces, tremendous serving effort from Djokovic. Tactically, from the baseline, Novak did to Jack Draper what he's done to so many opponents that struggle with mobility a little bit. And as I'll talk about with Draper at this point in his career, he does. I think Novak's tactic and his ability to execute it was key as well, was just changing direction as much as possible, going down the line at an extraordinarily high rate, something that players without Novak's ability to time the ball and redirect the ball, something that they could not execute, but Djokovic can. And I found that for the most part, he would never hit 2 cross-court balls in a row. Djokovic would always go either line right away, or he would go cross-court line, cross-court line, cross-court line, or again, line, line, line. He would never hit cross-court twice in a row. And what that's going to do is it's obviously going to change which corner of the court the ball is being hit to with more regularity, and it's going to move Draper corner to corner instead of settling into a cross-court rally where there's going to be less running done by both players, actually, by the way, in the rally. So against some players, you might see Djokovic not implement that tactic. Let's say he's playing like RBA or someone who's super comfortable just moving corner to corner. Novak might not change direction so often, but against Draper, that was the tactic, and I think it was a great one, and it was very effective. The last thing I want to talk about from Novak's perspective strictly is his footing on the grass. It's something that gave him a lot of trouble. Djokovic was 0 for 7 on break points in the first set. It was the main reason he lost the first set. It felt a little bit fluky, not to take any credit away from Draper, who was fantastic and was clutch as well. But Djokovic lost his footing on 2 key break points out of the 7 in the first set. And he said after the match, "I don't recall slipping this many times," and hinted at the fact that he might need to make some adjustments in his movement. Well, I've talked about this before, but Djokovic moves quite differently from most of the players on tour on the grass courts. He moves more aggressively. Conventionally, what you do on grass is you take more small adjustment steps moving to the ball, especially into the corners, and that just reduces the shock and reduces the necessity for traction on the court, which you don't really have. On a hard court or a clay court, you don't need to take a lot of little steps. You can just take big steps and then slide into the ball. And generally, Novak has basically moved on grass as if it's a hard court or a clay court, and he's just kind of used his ability to slide, and he's been able to keep his balance. But it just wasn't really working for him today. And he was, instead of keeping his balance, despite moving like he would on other surfaces, he was slipping and he wasn't able to keep his footing. So let's see if he adjusts his movement. Perhaps there were other factors at play. It had been raining kind of, I think all morning long, and the roof was closed. And I don't know if the dampness outside combined with the closed roof kind of made a cocktail that made the grass more moist, and as a result made it more slippery. And maybe later on in the tournament, it's likely the grass gets less slippery, it gets harder, it dies a little bit behind the baseline, and generally the conditions become drier, so Djokovic can move like he normally does. But I would liken it to like an F1 driver driving in the rain. And Novak is someone who just comes into every corner very, very aggressively when it comes to his movement, where most other players, when they play on the slippery grass, instead of sliding, they're going to move a little bit more cautiously. So it's interesting, and we'll track it throughout the tournament. Now let's talk about Jack Draper. 19 years old, comes into this match. The first thing that comes really sticks out is his mentality, because he really looked like he had no fear, and he went after the ball. He was not shy out there. He walked around the court with a presence, with a swagger, and these are all good things you want to see. Someone who did not look afraid of being the hometown kid opening Wimbledon on center court against Novak Djokovic, one of the greatest of all time. So that's a really good sign. The serve is big. He's lefty. I liked how he mixed up his spots. He mixed up his serves really, really well, but the serve should improve. It should get bigger. He still doesn't pump it up to the 130 mile per hour range very often. He's much more often below that range, and at about 6'6" with a good strong frame, he should be able to add some miles per hour. I don't know if the technique doesn't really lend itself to that very well at this stage, but we'll have to see. But I do think the serve will get bigger. He's also, I think, really good from a set position off both wings. I like how it's not just the forehand that's a big weapon. He's not just a big serve and a big forehand, but he can actually create off the backhand really well. I think he's really comfortable ripping the backhand side, and for a tall lefty, for some reason that feels rare. It feels like we haven't seen that much out of some of the players who you might want to compare Jack Draper to, like a Gilles Muller or a Feliciano Lopez, both big lefties lefties who are just not comfortable really hitting through the backhand. So it's good to see that he can do that. Really, he just needs to improve his mobility, needs to be better on the move, return, defense. What happened with Draper here, especially I think on the forehand side, I liked him better on the backhand side, and he actually got the break in the first set, partially because he hit a beautiful backhand pass cross court on the run. But when he was on the run on his forehand side, he just bled errors. He couldn't keep the ball in the court. He was very vulnerable in that position from the corners on his forehand side. So that needs to be better, because you cannot reach an elite level without good on-the-run play and without good mobility. Nobody's been able to do that, really. I think in the history of the sport, who hasn't moved well and has reached the heights of a Grand Slam champion, who hasn't been able to hit on the run? I don't think anyone. Correct me if I'm wrong. Maybe, back in the day of serve and volley, it might have been a little bit different, where you had some players just bombing serves and coming forward. That's a little bit different. But in the modern game, I don't think we've seen that. So with that being said, I like what I see from Jack Draper. I think surely he's going to be a factor at this tournament for years to come. But please do not compare him or burden him with the expectations of the next Andy Murray. It is completely inappropriate. He is not flashing that kind of potential. That's not to say that he can't reach that level, but he has miles to go. There is no guarantee that he can cover that ground. There is no guarantee that he can make all those improvements. And there is no reason to call him the heir apparent to Andy Murray. It does not help him. It is, and the most likely result is that if you are slapping that label on him, that you are going to look silly with years to come. Just like everyone who called Grigor Dimitrov baby fed not only hurt Grigor Dimitrov, but looked silly. So please, I like what I see from Draper. He's got a solid base, great ground strokes, good weapons, good serve, seemingly a really great mentality. That's awesome. Like, there's a lot there, but there's a lot that's not there that needs to be there, and we definitely shouldn't be comparing him to Andy Murray. That's all I got. Hope you enjoyed. Don't forget to subscribe. Make sure you're following me on Twitter at Gill_Gross. I'll see you next time.